Hello. I just wanted to jump on here and answer a question that I received from a viewer earlier today. The question that they had asked, in a nutshell, was they were looking for some suggestions for plants to start a garden, whether they were starting a garden indoors or outdoors, and they're actually journeying on the path of the druidic path. So I came up with some ideas, and I realized that my response through Messenger would be way too long. So I decided to make a video for them. But they were looking for an indoor garden. Now, I have a large garden outside, and I also have an indoor garden. Because I live in the Pacific Northwest, which is way north, our winters, and I am way north, our winters are really harsh. So a lot of my plants, I can't. They go to sleep in the winter. They go dormant. So a lot of my plants I have to grow in the spring and summer and harvest. And then my garden goes to bed, starting to at this point, and it's September right now. So it's already starting the process. But I do have plants that I keep inside. Now, depending on where this listener, this person that wrote in, depending on what part of the world they live in or what part of the United States they live in, they may be able to grow plants that I cannot. So the list that I'm going to give and the ideas that I have, they can expand on that by doing a little bit of herb research. I'm just going to go with the things that work for me for the most part. And things that you can grow inside and why. So having a garden indoors is helpful in so many ways. It's helpful energetically for your home and the feeling of your home. It's helpful as far as medicinally for yourself, if you're into medicinals. It's also helpful spiritually. So being able to change the energies within yourself while you're interacting with these plants inside your home. So if you go with just a basic herb collection, culinary herbs, it's the easiest way to begin is with culinary herbs. And I know it sounds very mundane, but it's actually not. So most of these are pretty simple to grow. If I were to give any suggestions though, it would be to grow these outside. So you could start them, grow them inside, keep them alive through the winter if you can. If you're in the northern part where it freezes, it might be more difficult. But if you grow these, you can move them outdoors. And if you don't have a freezing winter, if you're in zones 7 and above, if you're in a zone 7 or above, most of these plants, these culinary herbs will survive through a winter. Some of them won't, but so here are the basics that I would start with and why. So I would begin with a windowsill herb garden, someplace where you get as much sun as possible, someplace a little bit on the warm side. In a room, I choose the kitchen because the kitchen is typically more humid than any other room in the house besides the bathroom. Bathrooms have a tendency to not have enough natural light, unless you're a lucky person that has, large windows, maybe a garden tub where you can grow plants. So you start your garden in a windowsill. And of course, any bit of research online will tell you how to start these plants. They're going to need adequate light, adequate water, adequate temperature, and adequate drainage. And most of these plants, aside from a few, can be planted together if you wanted to do one large pot. A couple of these, they're more Mediterranean and they like drier soil. So as an example, planting rosemary and basil together is not a good idea. They just don't get along in the water department. But we're gonna start with chives. So chives are a wonderful protection herb. When you have chives in your home, chives will chase away negativity. They're great for colds. You can actually chop up your chives and put it in tea. You can Doesn't taste very good, but I've done it. You can put it on food. It's great for the flu. It's great for congestion. Once you get through winter with your chives, you can also take them outside. Chives, the roots of the chive plant in my area, because I'm in zone 6A, I believe. Well, it depends. Outside of my home, 10 feet out is 6A. Up towards the foundation of my home and away from the trees is 6B. So I'm able to grow more plants closer into my foundation. But you can take those chives and you can plant them around the foundation of your home. And it will actually, they'll grow great depending on where you're located. And they don't require a lot of water. They love sun. But you can plant them around the foundation of your home as a barrier of protection against negativity. So the great thing about chives is they will multiply and they'll grow. They're tiny little onions. So over time, that clump will grow larger and larger. And they produce beautiful pink or white flowers. Sometimes they're slightly pink purple. They produce those in the summertime. And they're so nice and they smell good. So I would suggest chives for that reason. Basil, another one. Basil is very easy to grow. It's very easy to root and it grows really well. In my garden, it grows fantastic in the spring. Summer, it's a bit intense for basil. It doesn't like the intense heat. I have to dump a lot of water on it, but it really, as long as I monitor it, it does really well. Basil also does well inside if you have enough light. Basil loves light. So it'll start getting leggy and stringy and kind of fall over if it doesn't get enough light. But basil's wonderful. Basil is just the smell by itself will boost your mood. I love sweet basil. It's got a very sweet smell and it will just brighten your day just smelling it. Brushing up against it as you walk by in the kitchen or the bathroom or wherever you're growing it just releases a scent. It's just very pleasing. Now, it's also wonderful for prosperity and for money. So I will go and I'll plant basil in like the dark of the winter. And as it sprouts and starts to spring up, I'll move it because I have a window close to my front door. And I'll move that little pot next to the window by the front door and it gets a decent amount of light. By the time it starts getting leggy and long, it's time to move it outdoors anyways. And it's usually April, you know, May, end of April, where I can move it outside where the night temperatures don't drop below 42 degrees anymore. And the ground is no longer frozen. And then I can grow it throughout the summer. But I plant it next to the door because it attracts prosperity. It attracts money. And so for a lot of people think prosperity, they think money. That's like most people's first go-to as far as their thought process. Prosperity to me is prosperity in anything. Prosperity in family love. Prosperity in your projects, the things that you're working on. This individual is working towards the magical path of druidry. So this individual can place that basil next to the front door, or if you use another door to come and go, like the garage door or maybe the back door, whatever door you use as ingress and egress most of the time, that is where I would place the basil, because that's where the most activity is. And that's where you would, you know, the energy of the house that is where things come and go. So that's where I would put that plant to pull in prosperity, money for monetary affairs, money spells. Basil's a really good one. It's also good for not just prosperity, but for success. So success in those endeavors. It's a great little plant. The one thing about basil is it will go to seed if you let it flower. So what I try and do is when I see those little flowers popping up, if I haven't been able to take it outside yet, I pinch the flowers off and it will continue growing. Basil, once it goes to seed, it will just kind of start to lose its luster. And yeah, so basil's also really good for digestion. You can make basil tea. It's really good for that as well. Now, the next plant we're going to talk about is sage. Sage does fantastic. It will overwinter, and you'll lose most of the leaves here in our area in 6B. 6A, actually, where it's growing out in the yard in the back. It'll lose most of its leaves in the winter, and it'll just look tired. However, every spring it comes back much larger. It does wonderful with that break, that winter break where everything freezes. Sage, as you know, is wonderful. It's a wonderful protection and cleansing herb. Sage is also a go-to in my medicine cabinet to ward off winter ills. So colds and flus, congestion, stomach issues, sage tea is wonderful. And I'll just throw a couple of leaves in a tea bag and steep that and drink sage tea. Now, of course, like with anything, moderation is key. Sage does have a compound called thujone, and it can be irritating, and it can be bad for you as well. It can cause issues. Thujone, thujone. You can look it up, do your research, check into it. Do not consume it if you're not comfortable with it. But sage tea is fairly safe in moderation as far as I'm concerned. I'm no doctor, but I've never had any issues with it, but doesn't mean somebody else won't. So do your research and look into it before consuming, of course. But sage will do really well in a super sunny area. I have never had luck growing sage indoors. I got it to sprout. I got it to be about 2 or 3 inches tall, and then it just keeled over. It didn't like it. So sage likes moderate to dry soil. It doesn't want to be watered too much. It doesn't want to be too dry. So it also loves intense sun. It loves intense sun. Sage can also be used. You can bundle your sage up, and you can use it as a cleansing stick. So what they call smudging in the indigenous American community. You can burn sage to ward off or repel negative energy. You can also use sage to clean that negative energy out or pull in blessings. So it depends on the intention that you're using sage for. Sage is wonderful putting out that energy of protection, and it also smells really good. So sage is another one. Rosemary, again, I struggle with rosemary inside. Maybe you'll have better luck than I do. Because of where I live, it gets really dry in the winter. Summertime, I just take it outside, and it loves being outside. It loves the sun. It's actually a Mediterranean herb, so it doesn't like a lot of water. You need to keep it, slightly moist, I guess. You need to be mindful of it because it's very difficult to tell when it starts to need water because it's got spiny leaves. So it's not like it wilts. It'll start losing its luster. You'll look at it and you're like, what's wrong with my rosemary? It looks like it's a different color. It's kind of dull. It needs water. The thing with rosemary is it loves to pulls moisture from the air. Additionally, it likes, because it's a Mediterranean herb, it grows in drier soil in the Mediterranean, really, really intense sun, but it's able to pull moisture from the air because it's the Mediterranean. You've got that humidity in the air. So rosemary is wonderful antibacterial. It's also good for oral health. It's also really good for wound treatment. Now, rosemary has been known as the memory herb. Burning rosemary, drinking rosemary tea, just using rosemary essential oil as for aromatherapy improves your memory. And there's actually scientific studies that show that rosemary aromatherapy does improve memory. Using it in your studies to help you retain what you're reading, maybe retain what you're hearing. You can also burn rosemary to purify a space instead of sage. Now, I don't use white sage very often. Going back to sage, I don't use white sage very often. I actually grow a purple sage, which is a culinary sage, and I use that in my own personal practice for cleansing, and it works wonderful. Now, I also use rosemary. Now, I'll purify a space with rosemary if, like before a ritual practice, or maybe, you know, I'll purify a space before I go into prayer. I'll also use rosemary to purify my tools, my ritual tools. I'll burn that on a coal disc and use the smoke to purify my tools prior to use. So you can also use that to consecrate new tools and to basically teach those tools, tell them what you would like from them, and prior to using them. Okay, so next we have cilantro or coriander. I use cilantro and coriander. I don't use it in my food. I'm one of those very unfortunate souls that cilantro tastes like soap to me. So I don't like it in my food. I really am not a big fan of the tea. I love the smell though. I love the way when it's cut, it smells wonderful. Cilantro I use for drawing. So when I grow cilantro, you can grow cilantro and basil right next to each other, and you have prosperity and money pulling from basil. You also have drawing, which is just pairing those two together, just increase that drawing, that attraction. So cilantro or coriander is also really good for love spells. Now, I don't condone doing love spells on other people, but I do condone and I encourage love spells for the self. When I talk to, when I'm talking to anybody and they're coming to me with challenges of self-love and self-acceptance, a love spell on yourself does wonders. Understanding and loving yourself is key to moving forward at any point in life. So I would use cilantro as a love spell on myself if need be. Cilantro also provides nice emotional balance. So if you're having a really, really rough day, maybe a whole rough week, and you're having a hard time balancing your work life, work and home life, maybe you're just bouncing back and forth between being frustrated at work and you know, traffic and all of that, and then you come home and you're having a hard time relaxing. Cilantro really helps with balancing that out. It balances out the energies in your space as well. So cilantro kind of keeps everything nice and even keeled. It's a beautiful plant. It's also really good, not just for loving yourself, but connecting to the magical side of yourself. Cilantro can assist you in connecting to that otherness within yourself. It can help with, you know, add a little bit of cilantro to your salad maybe. Maybe have a little extra cilantro in your salsa for dinner prior to educating yourself on your magical path. Cilantro will help you make those connections. Cilantro is also known to assist with persistence. So not only is it drawing and pulling stuff into your home, drawing and pulling wonderful, beautiful, loving energies into your space, it's also great for persisting, stamina, being able to go the long haul. So it's wonderful at persistence and stamina, especially in your education and your learning. So you've got rosemary for memory to retain what you have, what you are learning. You've got basil to pull in that prosperity, pull in the opportunity, and you've got cilantro to also draw, but to assist in the persistence of that, to persist in the consistency. Now we're going to move on to parsley. Parsley, first of all, parsley has a really interesting folklore around it. I was told years and years and years ago, I was a little girl, I think, when I heard it, that parsley should never be grown on your own. Parsley should always be received as a gift. I found that kind of interesting. I have never grown parsley from seed. I actually was gifted parsley plants a few times, and I planted it outside when we first moved here, and unfortunately it died in the winter, even though it was supposed to survive. So I don't have my parsley plant anymore, and I haven't been gifted another one. So one of these days I will have more parsley. But parsley is wonderful for fertility and lust. It's also connected to the underworld, the otherness, the other side of things. And in Greek mythology, parsley is said, because of the way it grows, it takes a very long time to sprout. And then when it does sprout, it grows a really long taproot. And in Greek mythology, they looked at that as kind of the connection to the underworld or the other world. The root went all the way down to the other world, or Hades, in order to grow. And it was just mythology. But that's why if you look through pictures, you'll often see Persephone carrying a sprig of parsley, because it's considered a connection to the otherness, the as above, so below, the other side of things. Now we're going to move on to one of my favorites, and I have many varieties growing in my garden. That's mint. Mint is fantastic for prosperity. All of my prosperity and money spells have mint in them. I have mint tea that I drink all of the time. Peppermint tea, spearmint tea, ginger mint tea, mojito mint tea. Peppermint is wonderful for brightening the energy of a space. You can take dried peppermint leaves and put them in a little bowl, maybe with some salt, because that's what I do. I'll put a bed of salt and some peppermint leaves, or spearmint or mint, any of the minty plants. I'll put it in that crystal bowl next to the door, and the energy that comes through the main door that we use to go in and out, as that energy comes in, it's purified by the salt, and as that door opens and closes, the mint is pulling in prosperity and money and success. Mint has a really bright scent. It's very clean. It's wonderful for travel protection. So if you have a little sachet, you can stuff mint in a sachet, dried mint, put that in your car for travel protection. A lot of times I will actually put mint in my boxes when I ship out products. If I don't use bay, I will use mint. And that helps in the travel of the box, getting it from point A to point B safely. Mint is also really good for psychic work. If you're ever, and a lot of people think psychic work like, tarot and all of that. And while it is good for that, psychic work also pertains to reading comprehension, I think. So if you're studying on something and your psychic awareness is at least turned up a little bit, the processing, at least for me, the processing of the words on the paper, or whatever it is that I may be looking into, my understanding of the concept is more clear. It comes quicker. I have a better understanding. Growing mint next to the door that you come and go from is really hugely important, I think, for money and prosperity. Planting rosemary next to an egress from the outside. So you come and go out your door. Mint is wonderful. Chives are wonderful. People come in. Where they come in, that's where I put the rosemary, because rosemary's protection. Rosemary is, it's also has its own protection and cleansing properties. So the way I see it is, as people are coming through my gate, they pass by the rosemary. Any negativity, any baggage they may be carrying is being tugged away by those spiky little leaves. And as they approach, their energy is being brightened, and because of the bright, fresh smell of the mint as they walk in the front door. So I strategically will plant things around my house in that way for those reasons. But I'm gonna move on to indoor plants specifically, ones that are very common, that just about everyone has in their home, and why I have them and how I use them. So easy to grow. What I call the king of plants is aloe vera. Super simple to grow, and it loves being indoors. It loves a bright window, does not like direct sun. It'll burn it and it will die, but it loves a bright room. Bathrooms are wonderful for aloe vera because it can pull that moisture out of that air. Aloe vera is wonderful for purifying the air in your home, which is ridiculous in the winter if you live in an area like I do, because you can't open the windows, you can't open the doors because it's, 5 degrees outside during the day. So aloe is wonderful. It wards against bad luck. It wards against negativity. You can use it in moon magic rituals. It's known for, it's a beauty herb, and not just beauty spiritually, but beauty physically. You can use aloe on your skin. It's antiviral, antimicrobial, antibacterial, wound healing. It's amazing. It's also hydrating. It plumps the skin back up. Wonderful for burns. Aloe, seriously, it's the plant that it's my go-to. I always have to have an aloe plant because it's all of the things. It's my personal king of plants. So aloe is wonderful. As with any of these plants, do your research. Read into it. I have a few book suggestions I can make for you if you'd like. Some of them I carry in the store, some of them I don't, but you can find them on Amazon or even the half-price bookstore. They're out there. But aloe, fantastic. Next is the peace plant. Peace plant. It's the one with the white flowers that are shaped like this, that has the calyx in the center, and it's got the long green leaves. You find them in a lot of office buildings. You'll find them in maybe entrances at hotels, in lobbies, and that sort of thing, because they're a great low light plant. You can grow a peace plant in a room that only has one window. It does great in low light. Plus, it is another fantastic air purifier. The peace plant, in its name, it's calming. It's got the energy that it emits is very calming. It's very peaceful. It's a plant of love. That vibration of love, that very high vibration of joy, that's what this plant emits. It's just a wonderful roommate to have. Peace plant is also known to balance the energies emitted by electronics. Now, this I haven't looked into very deeply, but it makes sense to me because that's how it makes me feel. If you're around a lot of electronics, and we all are with Wi-Fi and cell phones and everything else, it balances those energies out for you. It's a balancing plant, and it's wonderful to have and super easy to grow. The next one is the fern. Now, I look at the fern as the quartz crystal of the plants. So if you know anything about crystals, quartz is a wonderful crystal within itself, but it is a magnifier. A lot of people will use quartz with their other crystals because it magnifies the energies of the other crystals on top of what it does on its own. Now, I look at fern in the same way because a fern will magnify the energies and encourage the energies of the plants around it. Fern is also used for protection. It also wards off negative influences. It boosts the magic of the other plants, which is hugely important if you have an indoor magical garden. Having a companion of a fern plant with those, you can't go wrong. So I hope this helps a little bit. There are so many other plants that you can grow in a witch's garden. Namely, I'm just gonna list some, but I'm not gonna tell you why because I'm running out of time here, but there's super valuable plants that I love to grow that are easy to grow, medicinally and magically very beneficial for your journey. But that's valerian, yarrow, feverfew, mullein, just to name a few. If you're going to, for anybody who happens to be listening to this video, if you're interested in growing a magical garden, I suggest beginning by not planting a garden yet. So many of us will move into a space and we're not, and I'm guilty of it too. Once I overcame this, my garden seemed to grow so much better, so much quicker. And I kind of felt sheepish when I figured it out. So many of us will move into a space and we want a garden. So we walk outside, we start shoveling a hole, and we start moving stuff around to build our garden. However, most of us, if you haven't been on the magical path for very long, or some of us have and we just didn't think of it, like me, for a long time, it helps to go out and make friends with the land first. Nobody wants somebody to come in and start moving shit around in their kitchen. It's kind of offensive and you get off on the wrong foot. The best way to start a garden is to go out and meet the land spirits. Go out there and introduce yourself. Be a friend to the land first. Provide offerings. Get used to what the land feels like. Go a full season if you can. Take your potted plants out there, of course. Start a potted garden on the patio or in a specific location. But before you break soil and start moving stuff, meet the land spirits. Give them some offerings. Offer some cream. Offer some bird seed. Water the land. Talk to the land. Talk to the spirits of the land. Introduce yourself. Let them know that you mean them no harm. Let them know that you are going to cultivate the land in order to love the land and bring life back into that space. Additionally, if you are moving through the practice of druidry, from what I understand, getting used to your local flora and fauna is hugely important. Not just making friends with the land spirits in your general vicinity around your yard and your home, but moving out into the world around your space, the parks that are located nearby, gaining an understanding of your local plant life and how that can help you assist you in your practice is hugely important. There's really no need to go out and buy a bunch of plants or a bunch of herbs, because one herb, if you have one issue, there's probably 50 herbs that are grown all worldwide that can assist you in that issue. Depends on where you're located. It's a wonderful thing about magical nature is that you always have what you need around you. Researching these plants, looking into it, getting a few books, and really looking at your local plant life is great. Now you can go to the library, or you can just get online and look at your local area and find native plants to your area. You could even look for native medicinal plants to your area. And there's a list out there, I can guarantee you. Whenever you go on a walk, I'm sure you've already heard this, but whenever you go on a walk, take an offering. Anytime. I take an offering when I leave the house, even if I'm going to the grocery store, because I never know what I'm going to run into. Just a pocket full of birdseed. That helps. A piece of bread. Now, if I'm going to be doing things and I'm planning on it, I'll take a little vial of whiskey with me if I need to make an offering. Or it depends. Sometimes I'll take an apple. It just depends on what it is you're going to be doing.